So here we go, smart cycling. What is it? Well, you can see a whole lot of people having fun here, except the ones that are trying to get on into Escondido and on the freeway shoulder. So what do you do after this class, after you've had this smart cycling class? You're going to have some skills that will allow you to use every excuse to get on your bike and have a reason to get out there and ride, including shopping and commuting, anything you want to do. You should be able to go anywhere and ride safely. You're going to be able to do recreational rides without a car, you know, either on trails that on the person on the left, or it can be a cross-country venture like these three. The man in the middle here is actually an instructor for the instructors. We call him Yoda. That's Jim Barras from the city of San Diego. He's the one that teaches Howard and Carl and I to become instructors. So the two people on his side are his sons. And so a number of years ago, one of their family things was, call it a bucket list item, was to ride across the country. And they started from California, so as you can see here, they're very close to the end. So if the distance is too great, or if there's an area you don't want to ride in, you just want to go somewhere else before you start, lots of different ways you can do that, by train, by trolley, by bus, by ferry. All of these things are available here in San Diego County, and probably in a lot of the places that you live as well. So the first thing we start out with is cyclists in the log. And this is something that every cyclist should know because there is a lot of misconceptions about it. And so let's start with this. Cyclists fare best when they act as and are treated as drivers of vehicles. And when we do this as a live session, we ask the class to just all read it in unison. So I could ask you guys to do that now. So you could kind of follow along with me. And the reason we do that is because this is the basis for the entire class. So cyclists fare best when they act as and are treated as drivers of vehicles. So it's vehicular cycling, basically. The individual, John Forrester, recently passed away, but he developed this class more than 30 years ago as basically a college level class. There were several units associated with it. It was 30 hours of instruction. It's been cut back to now 3 hours of classroom and 6 hours of road session. So we hit the highlights, and and then we help you on how to get the rest of it. So let's go into the vehicle code. I can't cover, the thing is really thick, but the only stuff you need to know is in very small areas. And one of them that is important is the bicycle is not a vehicle in California. That's not true elsewhere. So if you're in a different state, some of you are signing on, I know, from the East Coast now, and that may not be true in your state, but the California Vehicle Code, CVC 231, says a bicycle's device propelled exclusively by human power and having one or more wheels. This eliminates the use of many other sections of the vehicle code that just can't apply to cyclists. But the important part of this for us is that we are included as drivers. So every person riding a bicycle has all the rights and duties as the driver of the vehicle. 21200A is the California section. Virtually every state in the country has a version of this somewhere. It's based on the Uniform Vehicle Code, which is what each state uses to develop their own code. So the rights, we all love those. The duties, maybe not so much, but that's what comes with the program. So we follow the same traffic principles that all drivers do. We ride on the same roads, we have the same rights, and we have to follow the same rules. So what are they? What are they based on? Well, when the vehicle code was first created, it was so long ago that there weren't many vehicles on the road. But the first time two of them collided, it was necessary to come up with some kind of rules. And so the first rule that came up was first come, first served. So if you get to a conflict point, it's the first one that gets there that gets to go. And then it gets more complicated than that, of course. So then if you have multiple lanes in the same direction between intersections, then the faster drivers go to the left of the slower drivers, and that's how you're supposed to pass. At intersections, then it goes to destination. Where are you going next? And for cyclists, we generally choose the rightmost lane that serves our destination. That might be the rightmost of a left turn lane, but it's still the rightmost lane that serves your destination, almost always. And then between intersections and conflict points, we transition from speed to destination. So that's when we have to start looking back, seeing what's going on behind us, and then make a safe move to get to where we need to go to get through that intersection. This is where most of the conflicts occur. So what are legal bicycles? Well, we have a few examples here. Actually, we took this picture here on the top left just a couple of days ago, where a little family was headed down to the beach, and they piled the kids in this little basket in the front, and that's an electric powered bike, so he gets a little help. Dad doesn't have to do quite all the work in this case. The next one over is a recumbent arm powered bike. This is from Challenge Athletes Foundation event. These are part of the Marines. A lot of them come back and are paralyzed. And this is definitely a legal bike. Here you see a unicycle to the right of that. Legal, one or more wheels. And then on the far right, you have, on the bottom right, you have somebody towing a trailer, and also another person in the middle here towing a trailer with a great deal of stuff on top of that trailer. That's legal, maybe not quite as safe as it can be. You couldn't see around that load. So cyclists are required to travel as far to the right as practicable. That does not say possible, and practicable is, it's hard to pronounce, at least it is for me anyway. But what does it mean? It really means what is safe and reasonable. So the way the vehicle code is set up in California, and on multi-lane one-way streets, you can travel as far to the left as practicable. So let's get into the vehicle code itself. So cyclists may move like motorists, and we can leave the right edge, which is where we're supposed to be in accordance with California Vehicle Code 21202, or we can leave a bike lane for a number of reasons. And here's what I generally ask in a classroom is, how many of these can you think of? So one of them that's really important is if you're moving as fast as normal traffic. And this may occur more often than you think, as if you live in an area where traffic is congested, then you don't have to stay on the right edge. And in fact, probably it's not a good idea to stay there. You can also leave the right edge if you're planning to turn left. If you need to pass another cyclist or even a driver who may be pulling in to look for a place to park or is just going slower than you are. To avoid obstacles, and that includes car doors, and to avoid right turn conflicts. So if there's a right turn only lane coming up, then you're going straight, you don't want to be there, you want to move out. And even if there is no right turn only lane, if people are turning right, then don't try and pass them on the right and move to the left to get around them. And all of those things, all of those reasons are legitimate for either a bike lane, or if there's no bike lane and you are basically in the rightmost lane that's there. And finally, and this one is really important, especially here in California, if there's no bike lane, if a lane is too narrow to share, and that's not in the vehicle code, the definition of that, it's in something called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And that definition there is something less than 14 feet. The last vehicle code section that's important to us is motorists passing a bicyclist required to provide 3 feet of clearance. And that's 21760B. And there's a sign associated with that on the far left in California. Pass bicycles, bicycle symbol, 3 feet minimum. The important thing in California is that is a white sign with a black lettering. That means it's regulatory, it's required. On the right, there's a sign in Connecticut that might be easier to understand because it shows the car 3 feet to the left of a cyclist, and they show the gap in between. And they talk about it being the law. And that might be better in California than just the words here. It seems to, but in California, if this is yellow with black lettering, it's not regulatory, it's just a recommendation. It's not something you can be cited for. So in 2009, California adopted language to signify what these non-shareable lanes can be. And they use either the symbol on the left, which is a bicycle with the chevrons pointing forward, and that can also be used with a regulatory sign that says it has a symbol of the bicycle, may use full lane. Those signs are located often on the right side of the road where they kind of blend in with sign litter, whereas the symbol on the left is painted in the roadway where it's easier to see. So that removes that practicable subjectivity from anyone, well, drivers or even law enforcement officers that may not spend a lot of time trying to understand what that means. So here we show a cyclist who is claiming a lane that is obviously too narrow to share. And in this case, we have 2 lanes going in the same direction. So being in the middle of that lane allows drivers to pass unimpeded, which is really good. So the sharrows don't have to be there. They're primarily there for educational purposes, both for cyclists and for motorists. If they're not there, cyclists have a tendency to keep moving over to the right. And if you're over too far, then the motorists often will pass you and well, why do I need to bother? I think I can get by. So in this case, you're better off being right in the middle of the lane and allowing drivers to see you and early enough to change lanes without having to slow down. So how wide are lanes in San Diego County? They're only 11 to 12 feet. And so in that previous slide, that was, I believe, an 11-foot lane. And so here we have our cyclist who is riding on the right side of a road. She's 2 feet from the edge and another 2 feet. This is kind of the minimum distance that a cyclist should have from handlebar to handlebar, and then a little bit of space because nobody can ride perfectly straight. And also you have to avoid potholes, any kind of thing that's in the roadway. You need a little maneuvering room to move back and forth to stay upright and also to stay safe. So there's a driver passing in a very small car, and this is a 12-foot lane. So we got 12 feet total, 4 feet for the cyclist. And now we're trying to find 3 feet of clearance. And we don't quite have it. So even with the driver in a 12-foot lane, which is pretty generous, there's still not enough room for this cyclist to be passed safely. And of course, that car is not the only thing on the road. And here is a bigger vehicle. I believe this is a Ford F-150 or 350 perhaps. And you can say in this case, basically there's no clearance at all between the mirror and the cyclist. And finally, a bus is a legal vehicle, of course. And bus drivers are pretty knowledgeable on how to pass cyclists. They have to be in order to get a commercial license to drive. So they will definitely change lanes, even if you're squeezed over this far. But still, this is just an indication that in a lane like this, it's definitely too narrow to share, and you really need to be out in the middle to protect yourself. So question, must we ride single file in California? I don't know about you, but I have been yelled at by a number of motorists who tell me to ride single file. And in fact, it happened with Carl a couple of weeks ago. And so we did. We were in the middle of the lane and we were riding side by side. So when we got yelled at to ride single file, one of us passed the other and the other would move a little bit to the left. So we were single file and still controlling that lane because we had to. So question here, is this legal or isn't it? And it is. So California has 4 different classes of bikeways now. It had 3 until recently. So let's go over these. Class 1 are completely separated. They're near roads or through the countryside. They are optional use. If there's a road nearby, you can use the road. You don't have to use the Class 1 path. Class 1 path in Oceanside, the most famous one is the San Luis Rey River Trail because it's been there the longest, and also the Coastal Rail Trail. Class 2s are the common bike lanes, and they are required use with the exceptions that we've just talked about, many exceptions to it, except the narrow lane exception, because if there's room enough for a bike lane, then that's, by definition, there's enough room for people to pass you without, with still giving you that 3 feet of space. They can have right or left side buffers to protect you from opening car doors, or on the left side to provide that 3 foot space. Class 3 are bike routes, and they may or may not have sharrows, and they may or may not be a bike boulevard. Bike boulevard is generally something that is set up to prioritize cyclists, and so it will minimize stop signs in the direction that the bike boulevard is going, and instead stop the cross traffic. The newest version is a Class 4. It's a cycle track. It is complete physical separation, and it can be separated, still part of the roadway, but it's separated either by bollards or cement or planters or parked cars, lots of different things that can be used. It's for bikes only. So while Class 1 trails are multi-use, Anybody can use them that is not in a motor vehicle. So we have walkers and skaters and pretty much everything else, but any pedestrians. On the class 4, no pedestrians are allowed. And again, they are like class 1, they are optional use. So the class 2 bike lane, if it exists on the road, that you can use that instead. And if there's no class 2, then you can treat it as a bike route. Whether or not it has sharrows, you can use the rightmost lane that serves your destination. So all cyclists who respect traffic law are ambassadors for all the rest of us. And so that's the main thing we want to emphasize here. In this case, you see our cyclist who's come up and stopped for a stop sign. They have both feet on the ground, looking to the left to see if there's anybody coming, and will also probably look to the right, and will not leave until it's safe to do so. That is the end of that section, and we'll proceed to safety, which is the next most thing that people ask for. People want to know about the law, but not that much. But what they really want to know about, and I assume most of you do as well, is safety. Crashes, how to avoid them. So let's go. What's the most likely cause? So here's a list of things that can cause crashes and cycling injuries: animals, another bicycle, parked car, pedestrian, solo fall, and vehicle. So we ask this question in our live classes. We ask and we say, well, what do you think? What's the most likely cause for a cycling injury? And what we find out is that the people that have the most experience will pick the solo fall. The people that are sort of new and just searching this out will usually say a vehicle, because that's the thing they're afraid of most. So what does it really look like? Well, most bicycle crashes don't involve a motor vehicle. In this study that was done in 1974, pretty thorough study using hospital data, which you probably can't get anymore. But in that case, what they found was 45% of the injuries, and these are injuries that are they're serious enough that they result in a trip to the emergency room or a hospital. So these are very underreported. Another bicycle is 17%, animals 8%, parked cars, people running into legally parked cars, or pedestrians. The pedestrian numbers are probably much higher now because of the fact that, well, I'm just guessing. I'm not going to guess. This is the way it was in 1974, and the vehicles in that case were a small percentage. There were only 18% of all the injuries that were recorded. So this is the one we're going to talk about for the rest of the night, except for the fact that we have some more recent data from the city of Carlsbad. And for all the crash reports that show up as police reports, which again are going to miss a lot of things, the solo fall was 39%. So it's, again, it's not 45, but 39 is pretty darn high. So the most likely way you're going to get hurt is going to be falling down. In Carlsbad, about the same amount were caused by motorists, and the other 21% were caused by bicyclists. So who's at fault for these car-bike crashes? And what are the most likely causes? Well, in Oceanside, we did a really pretty thorough study of all the police reports, and we're talking about not the ones that we picked off of the statewide with a collection agency. Switters is the thing that where all these things are cataloged. We actually read each of the hand written police reports and then worked for quite a while to categorize them. What we found out, first of all, was that 61% in the city of Oceanside were caused by the cyclists. And we also found that 90% of them involve turning or failing to yield to traffic. That's so some kind of turning motion. Now, the big one, all the ones in blue, if you look at this, are caused by the cyclists. And the huge number up here was from cyclists riding the wrong way or on sidewalks, or even worse, the wrong way on sidewalks. And the crashes usually don't take place on the sidewalk itself. They take place at intersections and driveways and alleys and other such things. The wrong way crashes, again, almost always take place at those same locations. One that's generally higher is in Oceanside, is not a big deal, is left turn from the right lane. It was only 2% here. We expected this number to be higher based on some national data that we looked at. But when you already consider that a huge fraction of the cyclists in Oceanside are riding on the wrong side of the road or on the sidewalks, it's pretty difficult for them to make a left turn from the right lane because they're not there. They're not in the right lane when they start to turn left. Driveway rideouts are another chunk that are a lot of times are kids coming out of driveways. Stop signs and red lights, 13%, pretty much equally divided. A swerve, where you change directions basically on the road, it's usually moving to the left without giving the drivers enough time to respond and be able to avoid you. And finally, we get to the ones that are the motorist's fault, and that's the ones we'll talk about for the rest of the safety section. You avoid all of these simply by following all the rules of the road, stopping at stop signs and red lights and being careful everywhere else, staying off the sidewalks. So left cross, that's a fairly big one in Oceanside. Right hook is another one. Drivers do run stop signs and red lights. The door is a special one. There's a special section in the vehicle code that collects these. So these are drivers that throw a door open and the cyclist runs into it. And it's the motorist's fault, but that's something we'll talk about on how to avoid it. Overtaking is a fairly small number in Oceanside and most urban areas. Drive outs, the motorist leaving a driveway, alley, intersection, just driving out into the street. And then there's a bunch of unknowns that are maybe these were hit and runs, maybe it's something else that just doesn't fit into a particular category where the police can't decide who is at fault. So you can anticipate, avoid, or deter most of these motorist crashes, and we'll get into how you can do that later. I wanted to show this slide just for a moment. I don't want to confuse you too much, but I looked at the data in Carlsbad recently since I now live here, and looking at the data that has been provided by a consultant that developed this, I got a completely different sense of it when I looked at the data from the statewide data bank, Switters, and used that in conjunction with Google Earth. Because what I found there is that things were reported not in intersections turned out to be at intersections, and they turned out to be right hooks, and there were some mid blocks there that turned. So right hooks turned out to be by far the biggest cause of crashes that are the fault of the motorist. All the red ones are. Left cross was next, then drive outs or backing out of a driveway, overtaking next, and then the other things. Here are some others. For cyclists, you can see some of the things that swerve, wrong way, ride out, and all other. So that's all the time I want to spend on that. But you can have, and even though Oceanside and Carlsbad are right next to each other, you might get different numbers, but the same kind of things show up. It's just a matter of how often they happen. So here we have the hazards of sidewalk riding, which is a little video. And now I have to go back because I did that wrong. Sorry. So let's go with this.
This cyclist on the sidewalk may collide with pedestrians and is also at risk of colliding with motor vehicles at every crosswalk and driveway. Riding on the sidewalk carries several times the crash risk of riding lawfully in the street.
Okay, notice in this case that the cyclist was also on the sidewalk riding the wrong way. So that plays into the next video.
This driver is signaling a right turn and looking left for traffic. He doesn't notice the bicyclist approaching on the wrong side of the road and narrowly avoids a collision. Wrong-way cyclists such as these cannot see traffic signs or signals. They don't know when it's safe to enter the intersection. Ignoring the do not enter sign, this cyclist is on a collision course with lawful cyclists and pedestrians.
Okay, let's look at right hooks, where a car is overtaking and then turns in front of you. Why does this happen, and what can you do about it? Well, number one, stay off the sidewalk. When you are invisible to the motorist, if they can't see you, it's just impossible for them to avoid you because you're traveling way too fast for them to react. They're looking for pedestrians. They're not looking for people that are going 5 to 10 times as fast as a pedestrian is walking. So stay out there where they can see you. Next, stay out of a right turn only lane if you're going straight. And don't hug the curb, please don't do that. Stay out of the motorist blind spot. So if you're catching up to them and they can't see you anymore, and you're wondering why you're catching up to them, think about the fact that they may be turning right. They don't always use their turn signals. So if, in doing all of those things, you still have the problem, the next thing you can do is prepare to brake hard or quick turn to the right inside the car's path. And this is something we go over in the road session, which unfortunately we won't be able to do for a while, but you can still practice this technique. And we're going to show you what that looks like with this video. So watch carefully how this cyclist initiates this quick turn to the right.
This motorist is about to make a turn unlawfully. The only escape route for the rider is an emergency right turn. The cyclist who attempts to overtake on the right of a right turning vehicle risks a collision. The safe and lawful way is to pass on the left.
Okay, so how did this cyclist, how did they make this quick right-hand turn? If you look very carefully, what you see is the front wheel is turned slightly to the left at this point, but he is already leaning to the right. As soon as you turn the handlebars one way, you start to fall the other way. And that's exactly what you want to do. So to do the quick turn, you first turn to the left very quickly. It's very subtle. You could hardly see it in the video. Then you want to dig, which in this case is push down on the right handlebar or lift up on the left side and lean hard right. And in order to help you with that, you need to look to the right, because wherever you you go wherever your eyes are pointing. So if you turn your head, look to the right, that's the way you go. If you look straight, then that's where you'll go, and you'll straighten yourself up and go right into the car. This takes a lot of practice. It's the hardest thing we do in the road session, but this is something that you can practice on your own. But just remember that you need to quickly turn to the left first, a little subtle move, and then go right. So what do you do if the motorist turns left in front of you? How do you avoid this? Well, you have an extra chance here because besides staying off the sidewalk, you can be visible. And the best practice these days is to use flashing lights by day, steady lights at night. But in this case, it's the front headlight. A flashing light in the front during the daytime is going to grab the attention of any motorist. You can wear bright clothing and I'll do all that stuff, but the light will really grab their attention. Make eye contact. And not only make eye contact, but get a response. You don't want to look at the motorist and assume they've seen you. And in order to get that response, you might want to wave at them, or if you can whistle, do that. If you got a little bell or a horn that's loud enough for them to hear, then you can use that. But get a response. If you don't get a response, don't assume that they have seen you. Again, don't hug the curb. Avoid moving blind spots. Now at this point, we have to ask, what in the world is a moving blind spot? Well, in this picture, you can't see it, but you have two lanes of traffic coming down, and you're in the right-hand lane, the rightmost lane that serves your destination since you're planning to go straight. There may be cars passing you here. And if they're between you and this car, and it's in the middle of the intersection, this driver could wait until this car goes by, never sees you because you're continuously in his blind spot. And as soon as the car goes by, they make that left turn. So you want to avoid those, which means if you see people passing you on your left, be extra cautious and either slow down, and probably have to slow down to let them go by so you can see what's going on in front of you, so you can prepare to, if you have to make that quick right turn. So signal going through. Once you get their attention, once you know they've seen you, point to where you want to go, keep pedaling, prepare to brake hard or a quick turn to the right inside the car's path. So again, let's see what that looks like. The cyclist in this case is really good at this, so let's see how they do it.
Failing to yield to a bicyclist when turning left is one of the most common types of motorist-caused car-bike collisions. This cyclist avoids the collision by making an emergency right turn.
If you said, wow, that is expected because this individual is really good. And in this point, in this picture here is just a screenshot grab from the video. You can see the front wheel is definitely turned to the left. And you think, why in the world would you do that? That just doesn't seem right. And you can see at this point, he hasn't even started his lean to the right. But that happens automatically. As soon as you turn the handlebars one way, your momentum will cause you to start falling the other way. So quick turn left, dig and lean hard right. So in other words, then now what he's going to do is he's going to push down on that right side handlebar, lift up on the left. He's going to force that lean. And it's a pretty darn good lean once he gets into the middle of it, if you've seen it in that previous video. And again, look to the right. Look where you want to go. So, motorist runs a red light or a stop sign. Yeah, they do that. Not very often, but you want to be really careful about it. What you can do, scan and wait for these late arrivers. If the light just turns green for you, don't assume that there isn't somebody trying to beat that orange light, or even what we sometimes call a pink light. So look and make sure there's nobody coming before you take off. Be visible. Best practice again is going to be those flashing lights by day, steady lights at night. Watch for people making a right turn on red. They don't always stop. Again, be where they can see you. Don't hug that curb. Be prepared to brake. And this is a special caution. We didn't realize this until recently here on Oceanside. There are major streets such as Route 76, which is 168 feet from crosswalk to crosswalk. And at 15 miles an hour, 22 feet per second, it will take you almost 8 seconds to get from one crosswalk to the other. And yet at that intersection, on some of the intersections, the drivers on the far side get a green light in 4 seconds, where you would only be partway across. So if the street is wide, it may turn red before you can get across, and they won't see you because of drivers to their left. So what you want to do in that case is go over and push the beg button, the pedestrian button, and just wait for the next light. At some point, Caltrans will fix that. They're required to, but in the meantime, you just don't want to enter if you think that light is about to turn orange and the street is real wide. Motorist fails to yield at a driveway. And again, it's your position that makes so much of a difference. If you look here that the cyclists on the sidewalk are outside the driver's field of vision, generally people have 20/20 vision for about 20 degrees. And when they come out here, what they're worried about is a car coming down here and slamming into them broadside. So they look left. And if you're there where they expect to see you, then where they expect to see a car, then they will see you as well. If you're on the sidewalk, you'll be missed here. If you're on the sidewalk here, you'll be missed. And again, because of your extra speed, by the time they look left and it's clear, look right, look left again before they drive out, both of these cyclists on the sidewalk are going to be right in the pathway. So make eye contact again. Again, get a response. Watch those front wheels. If they start to move, danger, danger. Prepare to brake hard. Next, opening car doors. How do you avoid these? Well, stay out of the door zone. Keep your entire bike out of the door zone. We'll be going over this a little bit more. But also, don't weave in and out of these empty parking spaces. Once you're out here, please stay here. And let the drivers are going to see you, and they'll go around you. But once you ride into these empty spaces, then you can't pull out again. You know, remember that first come, first serve? You've got to yield to all the drivers that are coming by. So unless you're doing this on purpose to let a whole string of motorists get by that somehow couldn't do that, it's best just to stay there, especially if there's enough room for them to get by you anyway. So let's look at avoiding the door zone. This is, remember, these are actors.
This cyclist is riding so far to the right that he risks getting hit by a suddenly opening car door. Keeping a safe distance away from parked cars eliminates the danger.
Okay, and at this point, I always ask, was the cyclist in this case, was he far enough out? And the answer to that is really, not really, for a number of reasons. You need to be at least 5 feet out because there are car doors that can come open very close to that. And I'll show you here why it's necessary to come out even that far. What happens if you do hit a car door? Oops, let's go back, sorry. It's a video. Okay, so one of the things you noticed here is that when the front wheel hits the car door, it gets turned inward. So if the wheel turns to the right, where is the rider going to go and his bike? And it turns out they go to the left. So we've used crash test dummies here, but it doesn't matter. If it's a real person, the same thing happens. So what happens is you and your bike get thrown out into the middle of the street, and you usually end up on your back like this dummy did. And if the timing is wrong, it's rare, but it can be deadly because the drivers that are coming along don't expect this. They don't have time to react to it, and you can be run over and killed. And these do happen. They've happened in California twice last year. So shy distance is important. Why do we need the 5 feet? Well, because even if the door misses you, if it comes open at exactly the wrong time, you are going to swerve, aren't you? I asked that question because I know you're all nodding your head. Yeah, I would. If it's a surprise, if it comes out like that. And in this case, we show a cyclist who is riding in the center of a Shero that was placed in 2009 when they first became available. This is downtown Oceanside. And this car is legally parked. Look how close they are to the curb. This isn't a real wide door. It's a 4-door. And the center of the Shero was placed 12 feet from the edge of the curb. And that's the minimum distance that you can place these Sheros. Now, almost everywhere these are installed, they're placed in the middle of the effective lane, and they're placed way outside that 12-foot minimum to help you stay out of the door zone. You also want to avoid the bumper zone, which means in this case you have diagonally parking. And in order for a motorist to back out, to be able to see, they've got to come out at least 6 feet. They got to come past this car. They're looking that way. And so that's just another reason to be out here in the center of the lane on these Sheros. There are now right side buffers in a lot of cases. This was one of the first ones in San Diego County. This is at Oceanside. And what had happened here is a 14-foot travel lane, which again is too narrow to share, or it is, well, actually it is wide enough to share, which allows you to, but the bike lane was 5 feet. It was right in the door zone. And then you had 14 feet of space, which is more than you need. So they narrowed the traffic lane down to 11 feet, put the 5-foot bike lane in, and they had 3 foot left over for the buffer. So if you ride in the middle of the bike lane or to the left of the bike lane, you are going to be outside the door zone. You're going to be completely safe. The buffered zone is to help drivers so they can get out without any of us hitting them, or in a worst case, having a motorist come up and rip their doors off. Left side buffers are more common now, especially on high-speed arterials. In this case, you can see how it's handled during the mid-block section. There's space here, and then a pretty reasonably generous bike lane here. I believe this one is at least 6 feet. And so then as they approach an intersection, the bike lane stops, becomes dashed, and there's almost enough room here for a right turn only lane, but not quite. Unless you pull out to the left as you approach this, there's a good chance you might get right hooked, again, by drivers who would not be using their turn signals. And there are many motorists who don't know that when a bike lane is dashed, they're supposed to move into it if they're planning to turn right, because it's absolutely illegal to make a right turn from the position that this driver is in. It has to be made from as close as practicable, again, to the right-hand edge of the road or the curb. And so as you see them coming across there, then that's your signal to move to the left and pass on that side if they slow down so much that you're gonna be able to pass them. So motorists overtaking cyclists, what can you do about this? This is something that happens behind you, and it's the one that most of us, I'm gonna even include myself, we fear this one. So what can you do? Well, use lights, including a tail light and reflectors at night. So during the daytime, still use tail lights, use them flashing during the daytime. Use bright clothing. That can help during the daytime. At night, not so much. Reflectors are very helpful at night, and you can put them everywhere. Don't hug the curb in a narrow lane. Again, what happens here is that drivers, that 20-degree field of vision won't pick you up, especially if they're driving faster. So you need to be picked up from behind as soon as possible. So you want to be away from the curb in a narrow lane so that they're more likely to see you. And it also gives you somewhere to go if you think that if you believe that pass is going to be too close. So don't weave in and out of those empty parking spaces. That, again, that's just something else you can do. And finally, this is something those of us that have commuted for years, we kind of take this for granted, but try to avoid riding into a rising or a setting sun. When we looked at the crash reports in Oceanside that showed that pie chart for several of the crashes that took place, the motorist was blinded by either a rising or a setting sun. And just as an aside, when we reviewed all those crashes, there were almost 200 of them over the 5 years. There wasn't a single motorist when they were interviewed that ever said anything but one of two things. They said, I never saw them, or I saw them too late to avoid them. Not one of them said, yeah, I saw them, had plenty of time to go around them, but I hit them anyway. Nobody said that. So, so it's up to you to make sure that they see you. Once they've seen you, they won't hit you. So the vehicular cycling approach, what we've talked about right at the beginning, this is vehicular cycling. What you do is improve your odds with visibility. And I think I've mentioned that enough, but we're going to talk about it some more. In fact, Howard is going to talk about it next. Don't cause crashes, follow the rules of the road. Anticipate and deter the motorist's mistakes. This is things we just talked about. And finally, your position is your strongest signal. You want to be where the driver can see you. And basically that's where other drivers are, whether they're in a motor vehicle or whether they're on a motorcycle or whether they're on a bicycle. And you can see in this case, our cyclist is positioned in the middle of this lane and they're making a left turn signal and going to stay right in that lane as it goes around. And this driver, perfect view, and will not run over that cyclist. So we have 5 layers of traffic safety skills that you can apply. And if you do all of these, your chances of being injured or hit are very, very small. The more experience you have, the more this will help you. Bike control, number one. And why is that? Well, remember the most likely way that you will be injured enough to seek medical attention is a solo fall. So bike control is vitally important, and we work on that during the road sessions. Next, follow the rules. We just talked about that. Follow all the rules, even the ones you don't like. Positioning, we just talked about that. That's really important. Finally, hazard avoidance. So if you've done all these other things, then it's time to try and get out of a harm's way by doing either a quick stop or a quick turn, which again, we work on during the road sessions. Finally, passive safety. We haven't talked about that too much. And they usually in a live classroom, I'll ask, well, what do you think passive safety is? It's something you do before you get on the bike, perhaps, like maybe putting a helmet on, that can help. Gloves are another thing for passive safety. If you crash, and you will almost always put your hands out to protect yourself, and that can result in some pretty serious injuries. Other things, glasses or sunglasses, something to protect you from things flying up off the road, debris and so on. What else? Your clothing. It's amazing when just a layer of even Lycra between you and your skin, if you fall, can provide a significant amount of protection. So it's best also to wear arm covers. You can get arm coolers now. That's another safety, passive safety thing you can use. Just covering your arms if you fall is going to make a huge difference in how much road rash you get. So I think that's pretty much everything. If any of you can think of anything else I've left out, feel free to share it on the chat. And that's the end of this section, I believe. I'll check once more, and it is. So I'm going to stop share, and Howard is going to take over here.
Hey, Howard, just a quick reminder. I just wanted to make sure, did you turn on your computer audio and the high definition video?
Yes, I did, Carl. Thank you.
Good.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody again. I've been sitting here with the rest of you for the past hour learning about the law and safety. And I think one of the most important things that Pete said was, you know, if they see you, the chances are they're not going to hit you. No one wants to hit a cyclist or pedestrian. So ensuring that that doesn't happen, visibility is really a very, very important aspect of that. So let's talk about our visibility. There's actually two parts of that. One is seeing, other is being seen. You being able to view what's around you is very important. Pete talked a lot about the importance of standing in front of you. For instance, the left hook motorist in front of you. Most of the things that occur to you of concern is usually in front of you, not behind you. However, if you are going to change your position on the road, it is critical that you're able to turn around and see what's behind you. So if you're planning on making a left-hand turn at an intersection and you're currently in a bike lane, you cannot just leave that bike lane and move left without checking to see whether it's safe to do so. Now, the shoulder check is fairly easy to do when you're young. For Pete and I and Carl, it's a little bit harder. We're not quite as limber as a elementary school kid is, as shown in this slide here. We do a lot of work with elementary schools, doing bike roadies and so on. And I swear to goodness, I think most of these kids in elementary school can actually do a turn 180 degrees and see what's behind you. But however, it's important that you're able to do that, is to do a shoulder check, see what's behind you, at the same time, have your bike continue to traverse in a fairly straight line. Now, you can use mirrors. A lot of people use mirrors, but we still recommend that you always scan before moving left and use the mirror to say no, but not yes. We're going to talk a little bit about detection. And this is where visibility becomes such a key thing. For a motorist to avoid meeting you or hitting you, they need to see you, which means you need to be as visible as soon as possible on the road. They need to recognize what you're doing. Are you predictable? You seem to know that, you know, the rules of the road. You're not weaving in and out of a bike lane. And the other thing is they want to ensure they have time to avoid you. So I need to detect you. I need to recognize what you're doing, how predictable you are. And then the next step is to avoid you. And the key to that is to do it as early as possible as a motorist, so that you can avoid the bicycle in front of you, the cyclist in front of you. This is a little bit of a chart that just shows you the concept of visibility and being visible as far out as possible. So the earlier that motorists see you and recognize you, the sooner they can avoid you. This is I think, sort of an interesting photo of a bunch of cyclists. It looks like they're getting ready to ride somewhere. Take a look at their apparel. Dark clothing always concerns me on the road. There's a gentleman sort of to the right side, has a black helmet and a gray shirt on. I'm always wondering what he's thinking about, because what's the color of asphalt? It's the same color. I'd much rather have a green helmet and a yellow or some type of bright lime green shirt on to be more visible. A lot of times I talk about ninjas. You don't want to be a ninja on your side in your bicycling. You want to be very bright and colorful, a lot of contrast out there. In the nighttime, we talked the importance of using reflectors and lights. I'd say probably the past 3 or 4 years, we've also stressed the importance of not daytime lights, especially flashing lights in front. Strobe lights in front are so visible. Anything you can do to improve your visibility on the road. The vehicle code requirements is very, very basic, and we recommend that you do a lot more than that. So the vehicle code requirements is just a red rear reflector, a white light that is visible, yellow color reflectors, and wheel side reflectors. However, do better than the minimum. Red tail light that's steady at night, blinking during the daytime. A vest or a triangle. Reflective material shows up so well when car lights hit it. I remember a while back loaning a safety vest to an individual who was going home at night from my house. And when they left, a car lights hit that vest, and boy, it just stood out so well. Leg bands, anything that moves, any motion helps a lot. Reflective rear rims or sidewalls helps. But again, lights are really important during, especially during the nighttime. My recommendation is, if you are actually a commuter and you're riding at night, set up your bike so you think it's fairly visible, and then have someone else take a look at it when you're riding at night. I've seen a lot of folks, when I'm driving, they have a flashing, blinking light on their backpack. But when they bend over into the drops of the handlebars, it becomes not very visible at all. So I really recommend you check out to make sure that you are actually visible on the road. Lights are definitely the most important precaution in ensuring that motorists see you ahead of time. Quite a few years ago, when planet lights came out, I had a chance to see one at a party I was going to. It was actually a dinner party out in Rancho Santa Fe, sort of very urban, an area quite a ways from a lot of lights. And so this gentleman gave me one, says the greatest thing in the world. And I turned it on during, the dinner party. So yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. Well, on the way home, my wife turned it on when we were driving through Rancho Santa Fe, and the driver in front of us stopped, not realizing it was just a bike light, but they are very, very effective. This is an example of a cyclist who is preparing for a night ride, and they're setting up their bike for lights. They've got a headlight on. Looks like they have a light also on their fork area. Tail light goes on. They have wheel lights, different colors, and then wow, a headlight on their helmet. And look at the gloves. Those are yellow reflective type gloves. And if you look up further down, you can see probably a yellow stripe there. That's probably the pant leg reflective tape on it. Daytime riding. That's the biggest change that Pete and I have been pushing, is use lights during the daytime. A rear light that is at least 1 watt is visible during the daytime. So that's pretty much visibility. But again, don't be a ninja out there. Everybody that rides with black clothing, I always wonder about them personally. If you're a motorist, think about you as a motorist. When you see a cyclist with dark clothing, they're hard to see, especially when they go into shaded areas. So I really recommend you wear something really bright, something reflective, something that's really visible out there. Again, if they see you, the chances are very, very slim they're going to hit you. Nobody wants to hit a cyclist or pedestrians. Okay, next thing we're talking about a little bit is riding between intersections. And what's important about this is your positioning on the road. If you're visible and you're in the right position of the road, that's probably 90% of your safety things you need to consider. Between intersections, you want to be visible by your position.
Howard, I don't
Yeah.
think you're sharing your screen yet. I don't know.
Okay, hold on. Oh yeah, it stopped for some reason.
You're talking great.
Yeah, hold on, thank you.
I'm going to mute myself here.
Okay, how's that?
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, riding between intersections. Try this again. Be visible by your position. Ride in a reasonably straight line. Be predictable. That's what motorists really want, to ensure that they understand how predictable you are on the road. And again, your position depends on the lane width. When I'm riding, the very first thing I think about is, how wide is the road? If the road is less than 12 feet, it is not shareable. So why would I be on the right-hand side of the road? I want to be actually in the center of that road. I don't want to entice, I don't want to invite someone to try to pass me when I know there's not enough room. So don't do that. Forever, when you started riding a bike, probably when you're 5 years old, probably your parents and everybody else told you, stay right, keep right as far as possible. Well, that's not the best position to be on the road if the road is not shareable. If the road is not shareable, and most lanes in San Diego County are not shareable, you're probably best to be right in the very center of that roadway. So it's narrow, not shareable. Wide, then I can be off to the right-hand side and have maybe 3 or 4 feet of passable area. Extra wide, very shareable. So here's a diagram of a roadway that is too narrow to share side by side. In this case, it looks like probably it's a 4-lane road, 2 lanes on each side. So the cyclist is what we call in the number 2 lane. The car is in the number 1 lane that's passing. So they see you ahead of time. You're in the center of that lane. There's no way that that car can pass you in that number 2 lane. So he goes around you, and it's a safe pass. What you don't want to see is this scenario where you're hugging the curb line and you're telling the car basically behind you, try to pass me. I know you probably don't have enough room, but go ahead and try it. Well, I don't want to be in that position and you don't want to be in that position. So if the lane is not shareable, don't be in that position on the right-hand side of the road. Be in the center of that roadway. Here's an example of a cyclist in a lane that recognizes that it's just, he needs to get out of that right-hand side of that road. So
This cyclist is hugging the curb in a narrow lane, leaving no room for him to avoid hazards on the right edge. Merging to the middle of a narrow lane increases safety. Motorists who wish to pass must use the next lane.
now I realize there's a big pickup behind him, but keep in mind, he's right in front of him and that vehicle is not going to hit him. He sees him way ahead of time, he'll just have to slow down. This is part of the ultimate lane control. This individual is certainly right in the center of the lane. He's controlling that lane. It's a double yellow. At this point, cars don't feel comfortable passing him, but there's no issue that he's really in the center of that lane and no one's going to hit him. Everyone sees him right in front of him. So you want to ensure that that's the case. Keep in mind, though, there is a law that states if you have 5 more cars behind you, whether you're a cyclist or a vehicle, you need to move over when it's safe to do so. But don't necessarily just wait until you have a lot of cars behind you. You know, be a good ambassador for the sport of cycling and move over. If you feel uncomfortable, you have people behind you, they feel they're a little antsy, just pull over and let them go by. That's what's so great about riding a bike. You can have a lot of options of how you can control that situation. If need be, you can just pull over to the side and get off your bike for a second, just take a break. But whatever you do, ensure that if you're riding in a lane that's not shareable, don't let it be shareable. Be in the center of that lane. This is an example down in Solana Beach where you have a couple of cyclists here that are in the number 2 lane. The lane is basically labeled as a shared lane. So that tells you right off the bat, someone's out there and measured it, and it's less than 12 feet. It's not shareable. You can see the vehicles behind these 2 cyclists. They're starting to move over into the number 1 lane and just pass them on the left. And that's what is easy to do. So as the earlier that motorists see that situation, they see this, it's a shared lane, they'll move left and just go around you and no problem at all. This becomes more of a problem sometimes when you have lanes that are greater than 14 feet. If they're only just 14 feet, the top picture that shows you try to get your distance between the car, probably at least 4 feet, and let the cars pass. But again, there's so many few lanes that are 14 feet or greater in the cities or in the county. Again, most are 11 to 12 feet. If you're traveling the same speed, however, no problem, just single up. We do this class during the road course down Coast Highway and along the California coast. And during the summertime, we usually are in the number 1 lane because maybe we want to make a left-hand turn, or if we were singled up, even the number 2 lane, because we're moving about the same speed as the traffic is moving. This is one that I think becomes more difficult, is where you have a very wide lane. Your tendency there is to probably move too far to the right, but really you don't want to do that. You want to try to maintain the 4 feet or so distance between the car, but you want to be visible for the motorist behind you. A lot of things we talk about is motorists seeing you. And if you're too far to the right of the roadway, you're not as visible to them as you should be. You have signage, you have parked cars, etc. And you start to blend in with the rest of the landscape. So most important to be out where they can see you. This also deters the right hook. Don't put that extra space on your right-hand side. Extra ride lanes at intersections. If you're going straight through that lane, it's best to be a little left side of the travel lane. That allows vehicles making a right-hand turn make that right-hand turn successfully and not impede traffic. It's one of the few times that usually have motorists say thank you to you. They'll allow you to make that right-hand turn. Moving laterally. Important again on the shoulder check. If this cyclist is intending to make a left-hand turn, he's in the number 2 travel lane currently. He does a shoulder check to make sure that it's clear behind him in the number 2 lane. He then signals, and then he moves into that number 2 travel lane. Now, the concern of that also, though, is make sure that when you look behind you, you may see the vehicle behind you, but be cautious if there's another vehicle behind that vehicle. Because if that vehicle behind you, directly behind you, starts to slow down, the vehicle in front or behind him may not realize you're in front of him to begin with. It might not even see you. So that's why the question marks are up there with the number 2 vehicle up there. He may not even see you as a cyclist up there. So you're gonna be cautious doing that. You're always negotiating in traffic when you're doing that, which is also nice because what you can do is look for gaps or speed. Traffic lights are one of the greatest things as far as providing gaps for you, because the traffic light turns red and there's no traffic for a while. So traffic ends up being sort of grouped a lot of times. It always gives you an opportunity to look for those gaps. If need be, you can always pull over to the right-hand side and slow down a little bit and look for the gap if you're trying to make the left-hand turn. Here's an example of a cyclist checking behind to make sure, a shoulder check to make sure it's clear, and then moving to the left-hand side to make a left-hand turn. So
a cyclist intending to turn
check.
left must first merge
Signal.
over one lane at a time.
Okay, shoulder check.
Each movement
There it
requires a
is.
look back to see that there is no
Left-hand
traffic
turn signal.
or that someone is letting the rider into line. Cyclists preparing for a left turn may be in the middle of the road for a considerable distance.
So again, moving from right to left side of the road, you don't signal first, you shoulder check first to see if it's clear, then signal that your intention is known to the motorist behind you, and then make your move. We recommend on signaling, if you look at the individual or the diagram to the left, the number 2 on the left, right-hand turn. I'm not sure anybody knows what the right-hand turn signal is anymore. I always recommend point the direction you want to go. If you're making a right-hand turn, point right. If you're making a left, point left. Slowing down, I think most people understand that, but point to the direction you're moving. Pete mentioned this a little bit, talking about a moving blind spot. Well, this example is a stationary blind spot, pretty much. And we're saying, of course, always stay clear of the doors. So in the top diagram, not only does he have the door concern there, that vehicle openings door, it's also the other vehicle that's 90 degrees to him can't even see him because he's blocked by the view of that vehicle there. If you move out into the roadway where you should be, then that vehicle has visibility to you. Running along parked cars, if you have a lot of cars behind you, you feel that it's you're impeding traffic, fine, move over when you have a chance to do so, but don't always just move into every gap on the right-hand side, because every time you move to the right, you've got to negotiate to come back to your left-hand side and get in that roadway again. Narrow lanes on rural roads. Unfortunately, when you're out in the county, in the backcountry, you don't have a lot of shoulder a lot of times. What we recommend you do is right in about the right 1/3 of the lane area. That allows vehicles behind you to adequately see you, but also to pass you safely. Right steady and keep left of that edge stripe. If you're visible and you're predictable, usually they will just pass you across that yellow line when it's safe to do so. Again, 5 more cars. You really need to think about etiquette on that and be a good cyclist and move over and let those cars pass you. On narrow roads with rural ways, rural roads with wide shoulders, well, that's great if that's an opportunity to have that. I just don't see it that often because you can ride in that shoulder area It's not legal for motorists to do so, but you can do so. Narrow lanes on rural roads climbing. The trick there, or the thing to think about, is being as visible as long as possible. Well, as that road curves to the right, how can I be as visible to traffic behind me as long as possible? Well, what I can do is I can move out to the left-hand side of that roadway, and that allows motorists to see me for a longer period of time. So as that road moves to the right eventually, then I can move over and go back to the right-hand side at that point. But the trick there is to be as visible as long as possible, so that when vehicles are coming up that hill or that climb, they see you and they know they're ahead of you. You're behind, they're ahead of you, you're ahead of them. Narrow lanes on rural descents. Usually you're as moving as fast as the traffic is. And so usually it's not a big issue. But again, if you feel that you have motorists behind you, just move over and let them go by you. As you're mid-block, you'll end up coming across an intersection. You want to prepare for that as soon as possible. Look ahead for avoid road hazards, rocks. The ones that always concern me more than anything else is longitudinal cracks and seams, railroad tracks. This is an example of a picture of a cyclist that's pointing down to basically a little lip on that roadway. A lot of the roads are being resurfaced in the travel lanes, but not necessarily in the bike lanes or the shoulders. And that provides a little lip, which ends up causing basically, we could say, a longitudinal cracks, a little edge. Awfully hard to get, which you wheel into a crack like that or that edge, it can cause problems. So you want to try to make sure you avoid that. Roadway going across tracks, the trick there is always to cross at 90 degrees. This is the photo of Interstate 5 going north from Camp Pendleton up to Los Angeles. And it's legal to ride on this road in certain areas where it's placarded correctly. A lot of times Camp Pendleton will close down the base for cyclists. And as you're riding along that roadway, be aware for truck and wind blast. This could also occur out in other roads in the county, in the back roads, et cetera, for semis. Trucks realize this pretty much, that they have an effect of the wind blast on cyclists. In most cases, they'll make sure that they start moving over a little bit to the left-hand side. Pete went out there and got this photo. It took him a long time to do it because most trucks that tried to pass him, or was passing him, passed him really far into the probably number 3 travel lane versus number 4 travel lane. But what the wind blast does is it blows to the right, and then as it passes, it tends to suck you into the left-hand side. So what you don't want to do is try to fight that wind blast very much. Just let it pass, and as soon as it passes, you're fine. Riding on paths, I have to say that Class 1 paths, in some respects, provides, I think, cyclists a lot of feeling of safety. But keep in mind, you have a lot of people riding on these Class 1 paths and using the Class 1 path. It's a multi-use path, not just only for cyclists, but for joggers, for skaters, for dog walkers. So really be cautious. It's not a high-speed thoroughfare for cyclists and so on. If you have a bell, it's always nice to hit the bell before you're passing somebody so you don't scare them. You know, sometimes I'll say passing the left, I'm on your left. 9 times out of 10, it seems like they move left to look around to the left-hand side, which concerns me. I think the bell works pretty well. That's pretty much it of my section. I want to turn it back over to Pete to talk about detection. Pete?
Okay. All right.
Did you want to do a break at some time, guys?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see a thumb from Paul. Let's do that. So let's take 5 minutes. Okay. And then come on back and we'll proceed.
Earl, have you looked at the chat room?
I have. It's not much chatting going on. I just unmuted everybody. If anyone would like to speak, just talk. That's okay. But,
I see a chat from Rob though about required device practice stop at a red light at a T intersection.
oh yeah, that's
I see that a lot of times where cyclists run through that. A lot of the answers that you might have or questions you might have are answered by the fact that what would you do if you're in a vehicle, if you're a motorcycle? And the answer to that is yes, you stop. So at a T intersection like that, where the bike lane continues on through, you should be stopping. And that's, I think, an example at Coast Highway. And I can't remember whether it's, can't remember the intersection there, but it's Coast Highway near the coming up to Encinitas is like that.
Yeah, by the Cardiff Coupe.
yeah.
Right.
Most of those also though do have pedestrian crosswalks, so there's more vulnerable users that you might be aware of. So it makes sense. That's a pretty common one. There's a lot of cyclists that think it's okay to just slide through a T intersection like that. A lot of the bike lanes are continued all the way through, and so people think it's okay. But like Howard said, just would you do it? If you wouldn't do it in your car, you won't do it on your bike. That's think of it that way.
So is my screen showing the tripping signals to start off with?
No, you haven't done it.
I have.
No.
Okay, so I got to fix this before everybody.
One comment, and it actually is a plus and a minus. I'm not sure you clicked on the computer audio checkbox when you shared the screen before, because it sounded like the audio was coming just through your speakers. Your speakers are great because the audio came through just fine. But the other interesting thing is you may not have clicked on the high definition video, and I didn't see any of those. Remember we were talking about those gray rectangles that were appearing on your.
Yeah.
I didn't see that problem. So maybe the high definition video is you may not have enough bandwidth on your signal for that. So what I would say is next time you share the screen, maybe just turn on the computer audio, but leave the high definition video off. I don't know what you clicked. I couldn't tell, but the sounded like the audio was coming through your speakers into your microphone.
Pete, your next section though is street types.
So it doesn't have any video.
Okay, it's not. Oh, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
Street types, yeah. So you have street types, then I go into intersections, okay?
Right. Yeah. Okay, that's right.
And we're kind of done with the videos anyway, right? There's just a couple of videos at the end.
All right, and let's see. Gotta find my share screen. I think I covered it up with. Oh, there it is. Whoops. Minimize that. Then share the screen. Share computer sound. Oh, okay, right.
So you just want to share the sound. That's
Yeah.
right. Just collect that one for now.
Okay. Okay. Anytime everybody gets back, we're doing okay. We're going to get through this in time for sure. So we'll have time for questions, and I don't know, maybe I can pull up some pictures I took, actually that Christine took at the road session in the parking lot in Oceanside that show people making those quick turns. Might help.
Got a question.
Okay.
How many lumens equals 1 watt?
It's not a direct correlation as far as I understand it. It's because the LEDs have different efficiencies.
Oh, I see.
Generally, 1 watt to 2 watt on the rear flashing lights are super powerful. And on the front lights, where they're white, they usually have a lumen specification. The front lights are usually specified in lumens, and the rear lights are usually specified in power. That's my experience.
Oh, okay.
We need a lighting engineer here on the in this program. Maybe there's one of the other people could speak up to that. Maybe not.
I mean, I'm an electronics technician. I don't even know the answer to that. I'd have to Google it or something.
It's hard for me to tell who's back. I can't quite ask who's back. Has it been 5 minutes yet? It's been close to 5 minutes.
Close. We only have 16 people now. We had 17 before. And we lost Elaine somewhere early on. I saw some chatting from her.
Sounds like she never got her speakers to work.
Oh, okay. So she could never hear what we were saying?
Evidently not.
Oh, okay.
Although we talked to her at the very beginning. I thought she was the first one on, but
yeah, I thought we did. Yeah, in fact, I know we did.
we did talk to her. Yeah, so I don't know what happened.
Okay, you ready to hit it, guys? Let's hit it.
Okay. Let's see, I got this. All right, street types. What are you likely to run into? Well, we're trying to provide as many examples as we can, but then also talk about how you be safe on all of these. So let's start right out with, okay, and if I press forward, that should go. Come on. Okay, there we go. Don't know why it was not doing this. Okay, local street. This is a great street for a lot of reasons, but one of my favorites is a little traffic circle here. As one of my friends told me when we went through a roundabout here in Carlsbad, these things are great. You don't have to stop. So I love it for that, but also for the other safety things. Okay, so we have a question here. So I want you to think about this a little bit as we go through these. I don't have them listed. So I'm going to ask you, how far away from the parked cars should you be? And the answer, and then beyond that, why? And by now, you'll know that you should be at least 5 feet out. Well, this rider is more than that. And so he's safe from that. But what are the other 7 other 7 reasons besides the door zone that you will be safer if you're out here rather than way over against the parked cars? And one of them would be a pedestrian, perhaps. Like there's the door open on this vehicle, and where is the driver, and what is he doing? Is he sitting in the car and getting ready to jump out? Is he in front of the car? Is he about to run out into the road? We don't know. So that's one, is a pedestrian. It could also be a kid running out to chase a ball, the obvious one you hear about sometimes. So there's 2, but there's still 6 more. And one of those is, by being out here, you're more likely to be seen by someone who is coming in from a side street. So that would be a drive out. So that's 3. Another would be a right hook. If a driver comes past this rider and they're out there this far, the likelihood of a right hook is greatly reduced. So that's 4. A left cross is another. That would be much less likely to happen here, again, because the rider is out there where he can be seen. Number 6 would be a driver that was pulling out of a parking place. So maybe a driver in front of this truck. If the rider is riding along, skimming the edge of this truck, he won't be seen by a driver that's looking in his mirror. So it's not just the fact that he might get doored, it's the fact that the driver might have the door closed, but then just pull straight out in front of him. The same thing could happen for a driver that is pulling into a parking place. Again, it's sort of like a right hook, but so that maybe that counts twice. But that's a whole number of different reasons why you should be out here. And finally, number 8 is this driver is far less likely to be hit from behind. He's not going to get sideswiped, and he's not going to get hit from behind because he is plainly visible to any driver coming up behind him. So a lot of reasons, and it's not obvious, but the more you ride, I think the more you will find that the further left you are is generally the safer you will be. You'll have lots of room to move over to the right if you need to. And in this case, there's not so much traffic. You can deal with each driver that's behind you individually. Not much traffic. Great street to ride on. This is the kind of street that you'd look for if you're trying to go from, like if you were commuting and there's a parallel major street that's full of traffic, then this is the one you'd want to use. And if you just want to ride around in the neighborhood or beach cruise, you're going to look for a street like this. But if you can't find one, then you're going to try and find another local street. This is, again, a little bit easier to ride on, but this one has more traffic. This is Pacific Street in Oceanside. And in this case, we have a question here on how should you ride with small children? And this picture was taken on Earth Day a number of years ago. And I took the photo while I followed this pickup truck for several blocks while this little group, the 2 little kids and mom, were riding at somewhere between 7 and 8 miles an hour. So finally, the driver saw a chance to get around. And so he pulled to the left and passed at probably 12 miles an hour. So is the truck driver doing anything illegal? Question is. And the answer would be yes. 2 things. What's one obvious one? There's a double yellow line. He's on the left side of a double yellow line. You're not allowed to do that. However, in this case, it's a safe thing to do. And in talking to the police in Oceanside about this very thing, they said that they would not cite somebody for doing this, passing a slow-moving vehicle, in this case, these little kids, if it was safe to do so. Another thing that's illegal is that he made this pass in the middle of an intersection. There's no yellow line here. There's a side street here. That's also illegal. Was it unsafe? No. Okay. Also, somebody says, well, these kids are in the door zone. Well, remember, they're only going 7 miles an hour. Plus, as they got closer, they moved to the left as they started passing the cars. The position for mom here is perfect. She's got her kids in front of her, providing direction, and she's to the left. Keeps them to her right, keeps them safe. Collector Street, they start to get a little bit bigger, a lot more traffic, typically 2-lane. They usually have bike lanes. This one does, and then the bike lane goes away as you approach the roundabout here. So how would you go straight here? Well, you've got 2 choices. One is that you can line up behind this car, which is what this cyclist did, and follow through the roundabout just as you would drive through it. And when he went through there, he went right behind this vehicle, waited for him, and then we all followed around and went straight through. If you want to go right, well, then you just make the first right. If you want to go left, then you just continue around the circle and make the left turn. If you want to make a U-turn, you do the same thing. You just go all the way around. You yield once to the drivers on your left, and once you're in the circle, you keep going. You're not supposed to stop. The other safe way to get through this, and a lot of cyclists who are uncomfortable putting themselves anywhere in front of a motor vehicle, you are allowed to get up on the sidewalk. Of course, it's a sidewalk, not a side ride. So what you want to do here is yield to these pedestrians and get off your bike and walk and become a pedestrian. Walk around, then walk around across there, walk over, get back on your bike on the other side and continue. So you can do it any way you want. The more you ride, the more you'll grow to love roundabouts for the fact that you can get through these actually faster than a car can drive. Arterials, these start to get bigger yet. And in this case, we've got 2 lanes in each direction. We have separate left turn lanes at a traffic light. And so this one is divided. And you can see the end of the dividing section right here. So what do you do here? There's extra turn lanes. How would you go straight here? Well, you've got a choice. The bike lane is painted green to just for visibility primarily. And then it starts again over on the other side and continues all the way up to the traffic light. So if you want to go straight here, you want to get out of the right turn only lane. So anywhere along here, even before this point, if you look back and it's completely clear, then you don't have to wait for here. You can just move over and line yourself up with the bike lane as it goes up to the intersection. If you want to go, the other part of the question is, where are you going to go if you need to turn left here? And you maybe can't see this from here, but this lane can go straight or left. Very few drivers go straight here because it's a dead-end street that just serves some condominiums on the other side. So almost all the drivers here are going to turn left. So one way you can do this is just come up in the green to the bike lane, and then as the light turns green, you can look to the drivers. If the driver's on your left, negotiate with them, make sure that nobody's going to go straight. You might go straight across the intersection for a while and look back, see what's going on, make sure nobody's going straight, and then make your left turn. Or if there's only a few motorists here when the light is red, just line up in this lane behind the last driver and then make your left turn without having to worry about anybody going straight. Right, well, follow the bike lane and then use the right turn only lane. What part of that do you want to use? Well, I think if you don't want to get squeezed to the curb, the best way to do that is right down the center. Would the paint help you here? I think the idea with the paint here is education. This is kind of a new thing in California. You can only use green paint in bike lanes. You can't use them in sharrowed lanes. You're not supposed to. A lot of cities have done that with the sharrows themselves, but they don't put a stripe down the middle of a sharrowed lane. They just do it with the sharrows. But this is, again, an indication. Maybe it shows up better for the motorists and they stay out of there. And again, they know this is a bike lane, and they've got free clearance to turn right here. Sometimes this is done differently. Sometimes this is done with skip dash paint to lead from here to here. Other ways to do it, but in this case, whether it would help you or not, I guess is the question only you can answer. there's a major arterial. These things just keep getting bigger. They keep adding more lanes. In this particular case, this street in Oceanside is a major east-west street, and it has, as you can see here, a right turn only lane, 1, 2, 3 straight through lanes, 1, 2 left turn only lanes. So we've got a total on the other side have 3 straight through lanes. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lanes. More lanes than we have on Interstate 5. So how do you handle this? That's a good question. You only care about the outside through lane unless you're going to try and turn left. You might be able to turn left here, but only if you look back and we're able to make that move in one move to go across all 3 lanes. So what you'd want to do is look back, make sure the road is completely empty, and then just go straight across, almost straight across, to get to the left turn lane. Probably not what you'd want to do. So Howard is going to tell you other ways to do that. But if you're going to go straight, how do you do that? To go straight, you need to stay out of the right turn only lane. So basically you want to control this lane as we've done here. On the other side, there's a bike lane starts again. So once you get across the intersection, you can move into that. If you're going to go right, again, down the middle of this. One of the advantages of this particular thing is there's a little no man's land, no person land right there, that little triangle. So if there's a lot of traffic and this lane is empty, when you come up there, you could conceivably come up here along the right side of a completely stopped line of cars and then line yourself up right there, straight across from the bike lane. So if you know the area, if you've been through this a few times, sometimes you can get better at getting through this. Again, the road is very wide, so you want to be careful entering on a stale green, especially if the far lane over here gets the green next. You might not have time to get across. Expressways. These are, by definition, this is a class 3 bike route. Sometimes there's a bike lane on this particular one. This is Route 76. And at some points later on, it's about the only way you can go east to west in this valley. But in this case, it's simply a class 3 bike route and there are no Sherrills. So we have a Interstate 5 coming in from the right. We can travel on the shoulders. We can use turn pockets at signals on expressways like this one. How would you handle this merge? It's a 55-mile-an-hour merge from I-5 onto this. And what you need to do is you need to get from here over to there. So one of the answers to that is very cautiously. And what you would do is you can see back up, there's no sight distance problem. You can see all the way up to the top of the on-ramp. And so you can see cars coming from a long ways. And what you would do is either slow down or speed up. Well, I'd slow down and make sure it's completely empty until I get really close to this point, and then just go straight across where you can do this safely, where nobody can come down fast enough to get you. So you can just slow down, even wait, just go slower and slower and slower until you can go straight from here to there. Would you bring your kids out here and show them how to ride? This isn't the place. Also, the San Luis Way River Trail is on the other side of this K-rail. And that's where most people ride. Most people don't use this part of the expressway. Can you ride on this freeway shoulder? Well, it depends. Bikes may enter any freeway unless this sign says bicycles prohibited. So you will find this sign on virtually every entrance to Interstate 5 from at least Los Angeles all the way to San Diego. But in Camp Pendleton, when you get to Las Pulgas, that sign is missing. And the only thing it says, even motor-driven cycles, that sign only says pedestrians prohibited. So there's no sign there that says, welcome cyclists, you may use the shoulder. They just don't tell you you can't. But on the other hand, they do tell you when you need to get off. So in this case, it's at Harbor Drive, and that's where you enter the city of Oceanside. So here's what we call the ideal multi-lane arterial. And in this case, where should the car drive? Well, of course, we put them over here on the far right, and we subject them to debris and grates and a sign that relegates them, on all these cracks in the roadway. We might not want to repave this for them because they've got suspension and everything else. So then we have all these bike lanes that are laned off like this. By the way, if any of you ever find out where this is, I don't care where in the world it is, it'll be on my bucket list. I want to go ride there. So, is the next section mine, Howard?
No, Pete, I've got intersections is next.
Oh, good. Okay, and then I will release control. You've got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is intersections up on the screen?
Yes.
It is for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to talk about how we move through intersections. Usually the busier part of a roadway is when you reach intersections. And the key to that is use the rightmost lane that serves your destination. I think we said that numerous times during this session, but it's a very key thing, is use the rightmost lane that serves your destination. So where you're going is really dependent upon where you're going to be on that roadway. This is no different than if you're in a motorized vehicle. If you're going to make a right-hand turn, obviously you want to be in the right-hand turn lane. If you're going straight, you're probably heading across that intersection into the next roadway. If you're making a left-hand turn, you're in the left-hand turn lane. So, as I said, I think during our break, a lot of questions come up as to what would I do in a certain situation. I'd say almost 100% of the time, it's the same answer as if you were a motor vehicle. What would you do if you're driving? It's usually the same answer to that. So in this case, your position on the road is dependent upon where you want to go. This is a series of slides that I think are very important, but I'm going to go through them fairly quickly because what it's showing is where a motorist is looking when he goes through an intersection. So this red vehicle down at the bottom here, he's in a right-hand turn lane. So obviously he's making a right-hand turn. But what is he concerned about? Well, he's concerned about the vehicles to his left to make sure they're stopping. He's concerned about any vehicles ahead of him that might be making a left-hand turn. And then he's looking right for anybody at the crosswalks or in the bike lane. But look where the field of vision cones are not showing. They're not showing necessarily well at all in the sidewalk. So, when Pete talks about, where you want to ride, this is what's so frustrating, I think, to me a little bit with people is people think sidewalks are very safe. They are not. They're usually not the place you want to be riding because motorists don't expect a faster moving vehicle on a sidewalk. They're expecting a pedestrian. So this motorist may look to the right very quickly to see if there's a pedestrian there. But by the time he looks left where he thinks the real threat is, a cyclist moving at 22 feet per second, he's not going to see him until he's right on him. So you want to ensure that you're in an area where you can be seen. Again, this is a really key thing on visibility. A motorist does not want to hit you. I'll guarantee you. This is one of my biggest concerns when I drive is the worst thing could happen to me is I hit a motorist or basically another pedestrian or a bicyclist. They're the most vulnerable users on the road. If I had a vehicle, so-so, but a motorist hitting a bicycle or a pedestrian really concerns me. And I will guarantee you, for that motorist, his life will completely change, whether it's an issue of insurance or guilt concern. I've been involved in a lot of traffic accidents with the city of Oceanside, and it really does affect the drivers who end up hitting a cyclist or a pedestrian. This next slide is the same situation. Where's the driver looking? He's not looking at areas where, on sidewalks, just not normally seeing it. So same situation. He's looking at areas of threat. Where's the biggest threat to him? Same situation here. Motorist going straight through. Is he looking at the areas where a cyclist may be doing a crosswalk? You look at a crosswalk for pedestrian, but he's not expecting to see a cyclist moving at that speed of speed. So just not there. Okay, we're going to talk about 4 ways to turn left. This is an issue that always comes up with people who's on the right-hand side of the road. They may be in a bike lane and they want to make a left-hand turn. Well, you can do it like a vehicle, which means that as a cyclist, you're going to be leaving that bike lane. You're going to scan behind you, see if it's clear. You're going to signal and then move left. And depending on the traffic flow, if it's fairly slow traffic flow, you probably move over to the number 2 travel lane. You'll scan again, and then I'll go ahead and signal, and I move over to my left-hand turn lane area. This works very fine if the traffic is fairly slow. And as you're making that left-hand turn, be aware that you have maybe potential left-hand turn coming at you like that. So you're going to make, usually as a cyclist, make a wider left-hand turn, which means also that as you approach the other side of that roadway, be concerned or be cautious about vehicles making a right-hand turn on red. It's so rare that you see a motorist do a complete stop on a red before moving right. Usually they're moving at about 10 to 15 miles an hour, hardly ever stopping, making that right-hand turn. So recommendation is, as you make that left-hand turn, don't automatically go right into that bike lane or that number 2 travel lane. Be cautious of anybody making a right-hand turn there. You don't want to have an incident there. This works very well, as I said, if the traffic is fairly slow. However, let's take a look at the situation if you had higher traffic speed. So if this was SR 76 and College Avenue, would I be prepared to move out of that bike lane into that left-hand turn pocket where it's posted 55 miles an hour and the speed, it probably on the average is 65 miles an hour? Guys, no way am I going to do that. So in that case, my option is basically to cross that street as a pedestrian. So I'll come up in the bicycle lane, I'll dismount, and then I'll push that button, and I will cross that street as a pedestrian, rolling my bike along next to me until I get to the side, and then I will push that button again and cross into the other side of the roadway. And there's nothing wrong doing that, and that's what's great about being, again, a cyclist. You can always become a pedestrian if you feel that you're uncomfortable about some of the traffic. Get back on your bike and just continue into the bike lane. So that works very nicely. Another option is what we call a box turn, which is somewhat similar to what we just did as a pedestrian, but you're actually riding through that intersection. So what I want to do is I want to visualize where I want to be on this other side of that roadway. I want to be in that bike lane. So what I do is I get out of the bike lane and I move over, across, going through the intersection into the other bike lane area. Be cautious of right-hand turns. I basically turn my bike 90 degrees, and then as a signal turns, I go across the intersection with the traffic. Be cautious about doing this to ensure that you don't start crossing on a stale green, which means that the light is in probably 3 or 4 seconds might turn red on you. You want to have enough time to get across that intersection into that bike lane safely. So only do that if you know the traffic signal sequence there. But very nicely done. and it's very easy to do. Another option is to do a right turn and then do a U-E. This works fine if you have a intersection that has lower traffic on the cross streets. So we've gone from a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road with bike lanes. So you're making a right-hand turn, then going down far enough where the traffic is clear and making a U-E, and then coming across to the side. A lot of options for you. The pedestrian and the box turn works very well, I believe, though. Intersections and trucks and buses. This comes up somewhat frequently. Be cautious of buses and large trucks making a right-hand turn. If you're in a bike lane and you have a truck in front of you, oftentimes that truck, in order to make that right-hand turn, is going to move left. So his rear wheels will clear that curbway area. So when he's moving left a little bit, do not get caught in that position in the bike lane, or you'll end up going right between his rear wheels, basically. In fact, this actually happened to one of our former city managers in the city of Oceanside. I think his bike got crushed, but he did not get hurt. But again, when you see buses or large trucks making that right-hand turn, usually they'll make a left, get the left, a little further left so they can get across that intersection and not hitting their rear wheels across that curb. So what we're trying to say is never ever pass a truck on the right-hand side. This is a little bit of a graphic here that shows this animation of what happens. So he moves out, the truck moves out to the left a little bit, so he can clear that, that curbway, and you get caught underneath that truck. You do not want to be there. Same scenario here again, showing as you go across. Don't be there. Also, keep in mind that buses and trucks have blind spots pretty much based on their size. And so, you know, if you're in those blind spots, they're not going to be able to see you very well. Be outside those areas, or just be cautious passing or being near large trucks like that. You can see how those blind spots move as that truck moves. Single lane roundabouts. Real strong proponent of roundabouts. One, it keeps traffic moving at a slower speed, but actually you get to your destination much faster. Prevents a lot of idling, which means you know, greenhouse gases being emitted on the roadway. You know, so often you see a series of traffic lights. Everyone goes at the traffic light. They idle there. They wait. Pedal to the metal to the next traffic light. Again, they stop. They idle, and they go on. A series of roundabouts allow you actually to transverse that area in a faster time at a slower speed. For cyclists, though, they're very, very safe because the fact that they're very slow speeds in these roundabouts. Usually you're moving at about 15 to 20 miles an hour at the very most as you move through that traffic circle. You know, up to about, I think we talked to the Federal Highway Commission probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And at that point, there had not been a single pedestrian or cyclist death related to a roundabout, as opposed to a signalized traffic signal. Think about all of the collisions you see in any city with in the intersections that are controlled by traffic signals. A lot of folks just either being drunk or just not attentive, running through those red lights, T-boning another vehicle. Here, if there is an accident in a traffic circle, it's usually a fender bumper bender. It's not anything really serious in most cases. For cyclists, the trick to this is to move into the center of that travel lane. You can see where the churro is at that point, and line up behind the vehicle, any vehicles going through it, and just go through like a regular vehicle. What you don't want to do is don't keep right as you're going through that roundabout. That'll squeeze you. And the roundabout areas are probably very close to 12 feet in distance around from curb to curb. So the trick is to line up early, follow the vehicle or the cyclist ahead of you, and be in the center of that roadway. Vehicles in the roundabout have the right of way, so be aware of that. As you enter that right of way, you do not, in that circle, you do not have the right of way into that circle. Real strong proponent of roundabouts from a safety standpoint, also from a cost standpoint. A signalized intersection will cost you about $250,000 to install. And then you have the maintenance thereafter. A traffic circle, once you put it in, is there and very little maintenance required. And again, the incident rate goes way down. No one's traveling through an intersection at 35 or 40 miles an hour and hitting another vehicle. They're all very, very slow speeds. As you exit a bike path, a class 1 path especially, be aware that as you're exiting, you have vehicles usually approaching you on the left-hand side. There may not be a sign there, but just be cautious that you've got vehicles as you're exiting. It's your turn to proceed only when it's safe to do so. That's pretty much my side. I think the next section is Pete on signal detection. If you can't do it, you can't activate the signal after this, I don't know what to do because Pete's going to tell you how to do it.
Okay.
Wake up, everybody.
You couldn't have put him to sleep. All right, from the beginning. Okay, tripping signals. And, you know, it's been a mystery to me
You're
personally.
not sharing the screen. You're not sharing the screen if you intend to.
I didn't share the screen? Okay, let's try that again. So how do I get out of this? I've forgotten. Escape? Yeah.
The joys of Zoom, guys.
Yeah. See, get rid of that. Share screen is, it's on the top or the bottom?
Usually the bottom.
Slide your mouse to the bottom and there's a green share screen button.
Sorry, technical difficulty.
Okay, Pete, what I can do is I can start it and you just tell me when to change it, okay? You want to do that?
You accidentally muted yourself, Pete.
Unmute. But
There you go.
Okay. Pete, I got it up for you. Go ahead and start it.
okay. Okay, you got it?
Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, always a mystery. This is the one that I get as a commuting cyclist. This thing has bothered me forever, and we finally understand how these things work. So, what is this? There's a loop on the ground. This is what it is. It's has a magnetic field, and if you put your steel, aluminum, or combination of thereof, any kind of metal rims on the wires, that will trigger the signal that will break that field and then hopefully trip the light. So the closer to the rims are to the loop, the better off you'll be. So what we tell people is tires to the wires.
Next
So,
slide, Howard.
pardon?
I'm telling Howard to flip to the next slide. There we go.
Oh, okay. You're still not seeing mine then.
No, Howard's controlling it.
Oh, okay. All right. Huh. exit, oh, nice. Okay.
Pete,
I think I took over for you.
okay, very good. You got it.
Okay. All right. I want control. Sorry. All right. So on the left side at the top, you can see the most common type of loop detector, a single circular loop. And this is the hardest one to activate. And what you have to do is place one of your wheels, you don't have room for both of them, tangent to the wire. So touching that either side works. And the next thing you'll see is a square type. And in that case, you probably can get two wheels on one side or the other. So that's at least twice as good as the one on the left. Even better is a dual quadrupole. And if you're in the middle, that one, you'll have 4 times the signal detection capability as you do the single one on the far left, and twice as good on the edges. So again, you want your tires is right on top of the wires. And then, at least from the standpoint of where you can be within the loop, the diagonal quadrupole is the best. It's uniform throughout that whole area. So down below, you see in red the undetectable location. So for the one on the far left, that circle, the rider that's in the middle won't be detected at all. Excuse me. And the rider who is on the right side is too far forward or not forward enough to get either wheel tangent to the circle. And then for the next one, the square loop, the guy in the middle, not going to get it. And the one on the right is too far to the right of the wire. There's places you can go where you can miss them. Even the guy or the person here on the far right, that quadrupole is too far to the left. They're outside that large blue area. Okay. And now we have, in this case, sometimes you can't see where the circle is to set off the traffic lights. In this case, there's a painted sweet spot. So basically you put your tires right on the little bicycle symbol guy, and that will trigger the light when they've done a slurry seal or something else that's buried the wires and you can't see where they are. There's not very many of these in use anymore, but if you're able to take the road session here in Oceanside, there are a couple of places where we've installed these so that you at least see what it looks like, and then you can, if you don't happen to live in Oceanside, you can ask your city to put them at a traffic signal that you are having difficulty triggering. Video detection is also used, and it's almost exclusively used in Carlsbad, whereas in Oceanside it's mostly loop detectors. The loop detectors, now that we know how to work them, and now that the traffic engineers, the signal technicians know how to adjust them for bicycles, they work very well. The video detection can also work, but you have to know where to be. So for example, in this case, this is an actual picture taken from the Traffic Control Center in Carlsbad. And you can see the little bike symbol there. This is one of their cameras at one of the intersections. And So they've labeled this bike, but where you need to be is behind the limit line and towards the center of the lane. Notice that if you're on the edge, if you come up here on this edge, on the left edge of that, you're not going to trigger the light. You won't trigger it at all in the right-hand turn lane because even the motors don't trigger the light at that point, because it's understood that there will be a break at some point and they'll be able to turn right on a red light. And I think that might be the end of that section. So you're up, Howard, or maybe I am for the next section. Is that right?
Yeah, you got interchanges, Pete, next.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay, is that slide up?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, I did the same thing wrong again.
You're getting a lot of people laughing. Pete.
Oh, good.
No one, not me, Pete. I'm not laughing.
Okay. So, share screen. Okay. And we begin. You should be seeing it now.
We're seeing your folder, but you got to open it up in PowerPoint, the interchanges.
I think I just did.
Then you're not. Then you're sharing You're sharing the wrong screen.
Wrong screen, huh?
Yes. Stop it. You're sharing your folder screen instead of the PowerPoint screen.
Okay.
You want me to stop? Let me stop. I'm going to stop your screen sharing for you.
Okay.
Start it up again. So go down and click on the share screen and point to this, whatever window has the PowerPoint in it.
Okay, got it. That should be up now.
Yep.
Okay. And I started one slide back, so let me go backwards.
And you want to go into slideshow mode.
Correct. Thank you. Okay. We there?
Yes.
Okay, good. Interchanges. So this is Mission and I-5, and this is what we use in Oceanside to help people decide how to get across something that looks so scary as this. And you really can ride through this. It really is pretty easy because you only have to get in the correct position at the beginning and just stay there. And you will be visible, everybody will see you, and they will do what they need to do to get around you safely. And we've done this with hundreds of cyclists in this road session. So we know it works. So the first thing that happens is the conflict that is the on-ramp for I-5 northbound, which is at the top of the screen. And so if you're coming from right to left, then you can see where the bike lane becomes dashed before you get to the freeway entrance. And so you want to move out into the middle of that lane. That's called the number 2 lane. The lanes are always numbered from left to right. So the fast lane's the number 1 lane. Middle of the number 2 lane, and get there before you get to the on-ramp. Remember, yield to everybody that's behind you. You can use the traffic light to make sure that you slow down or wait until you have an empty road behind you, so that once you're out there, everybody has plenty of time to react to you. So this avoids the right hook. As you can see it, that little arrow going onto the freeway. You're not going to get right hooked. And the left cross for people that are coming from the left side of the screen and turning north. So you continue to control, be in the middle of that number 2 through lane. So this is what it looks like from the bicycle's point of view. And so this is one of our instructors, and looking back, signaling, merging left, it's clear behind, and controlling the lane. So next, we have the off-ramp conflict. This is people that are coming from San Diego and probably going to the beach. So the beach is to your left, and these drivers were going north, and they circle around. And you can see what's happened here is they've created a new travel lane, we call it the number 3 lane, for drivers who are getting off, so that they can come off at, they don't have to stop, they just can come off at speed. And then, unless they're going back to San Diego, they got to get out of that lane and move over into either the number 2 lane or the number 1 lane if they want to go down to the beach. So in our case, what we do is we come up here and we scan, look down that on-ramp, make sure that the drivers see you, and they will. This is one place where drivers must let go of their cell phones. They must pay attention. If they don't, they're going to run into these palm trees. They're not going to make this curve. They can't text. They can't do anything other than pay attention. So you negotiate with them. Basically, you look at them and make sure they see you, and then just stay going straight and steady. So continue to control that all the way across. Notice that we haven't changed anything at all. We're just staying right there. The thing that makes this a little tricky is the fact that it's uphill. So you actually have to climb this grade to get up over the freeway. So it's, well, drivers are going to have to pass you because you just can't go fast enough to keep them happy. So I'm going to back up. So what she's doing here is looking to the right, negotiating, and just hold that line. All right, that was the next one. I thought there was going to be more. So here we are going across, and we're going to hold this. This is the next thing we come up to is the on-ramp for drivers who are taking that flow relief and going back south on Interstate 5. And so some of those drivers will be coming up in the number 1 lane and will need to move over. The exiting vehicles are going to have to get out of where they are. So there's a lot of weaving that goes on over the top of the bridge. So the thing you want to avoid is moving over to the far right. You have to yield to everybody that's getting off, and then again, yield to everybody that's getting on. It puts you in a very bad position. You won't be visible, and you might have to wait a very, very long time. So this is what it looks like, and quite often it is this empty. But what you have here basically is an 11-foot wide bicycle lane that you control. It'd be really nice if there are sharrows here, And we understand that Caltrans has now agreed that they will place sharrows in the middle of this lane. So that by the next time you are able to take a class here in Oceanside, we'll have the sharrows, which aren't going to change the legality of anything, but they will educate motorists who don't believe that we are allowed to ride in this position. So in this case, we have one driver who has passed on the left in the red car is going to move over into the number 2 lane. You can see they've started to turn. And in this case, this driver in the truck on the right has moved over from the number 2 lane into the number 3 lane to get on the freeway going south. So again, when they do pass, you've got more room than you could ever hope to have in a bicycle lane. Finally, as you pass the last off-ramp, you have, or past the last on-ramp, you have the off-ramp that is just to the left of that. And this is controlled by a traffic light. So you just continue to control that lane, stop at the light if it's there, if it's red, and then proceed the same way you would if you were driving. Stay as far to the right as practicable, past the interchange. In this case, we could stay in the number 2 lane and continue, but what we usually do is we ride across this one person at a time. And so as each person gets in there, we pull into this right-hand turn lane, we go into the shopping center, find an empty parking place, and then gather to discuss what happened and how they felt. And it's usually a pretty empowering experience for everybody. So the summary, how do you do this? This gives you the whole thing, the bird's eye view. Drive your bike and do it confidently. Don't do that far to the right as possible. That doesn't work too well. Increases the conflicts, encourages unsafe passes. It's just there just isn't anything good to say about that. Pedestrian bailout, if this is too freaky, then the only way to really do it safe is to get off your bike and walk and yield at all these different locations that you see in red. And since we offer a free lunch, you miss lunch. In fact, if anybody does this, we ask them to come back to a future road session, because you need to be able to do this if you want to graduate from the class.
Hey, Pete, this is Carl. I don't think anyone's really ever bailed, though. At least not by my, I don't remember anyone balking at it.
Yes, we've had one.
Okay.
But that's not many in comparison to the hundreds that have done it. There are people that have refused to do it. And, you know, but there are some that started to try it, one that started to try it and then went straight to the right and got off to walk. So that was the one that we said, well, you know, if you can't do it, then, you know, what are you going to do if you run into the situation? This one is pretty challenging, but then between Oceanside and Carlsbad, there's this thing called 78, and it is more difficult to cross in many locations than this one is. So, and you know, there just isn't any other way. And in the case of this particular crossing, there are parallel streets on either side that don't have any entrances and exits, but we use this because it's necessary to be able to teach people how to handle this kind of situation, which you sometimes can't avoid at all. So, you're up again, Howard.
Okay, stripes. This is to sort of review your understanding of striping on roadways. So it's a little quiz, pretty simple to do though. So let's take a look at the first slide here. Is this a bike lane stripe? And if it is, you're going to have to ride in that gutter area the entire way. So I see Joe shaking his head. No, that's just a line. That's a edge stripe is what it amounts to. Bike lane stripes are 4 inches, and they you should have a width of no less than 4 feet. If there's a curb line with a gutter pan, it should be 5 feet. So in most cases, you'll see a curb and gutter line, which means you should have a 5-foot bike lane in most cases, okay? How about this though? This looks pretty good. We've got a cyclist here in, looks like a protected area somewhat. But I want you to look further up on the roadway here. You see a right-hand turn arrows further up the roadway. You should never have a bike lane to the right of a right-hand turn lane. That's a bad traffic design situation. Bike lane should always be left of a right-hand turn lane. So let's look a little further up and go back, look backwards. You can see now that that's really not a bike lane. It's just a shorter stripe. Otherwise, that bike lane should be to the other side of that vehicle making right-hand turn. Okay, bike lane. Bike lanes, as I said, should be at least 5 feet. They should be marked as a bike lane. It should be signage as a bike lane. And we're seeing a lot more bike lanes with green paint. And that's something that Pete mentioned is fairly recent. The idea is that green paint is allowable in what we call conflict areas. So areas that you're crossing or you have vehicles crossing the bike lane, you'll see some green paint nowadays to it. It also, a bike lane becomes dotted about 150 to 250 feet prior to an intersection. When you see that dash starting on a bike lane, that gives you an indication that you're coming up to an intersection normally with a right-hand turn. And you need to decide whether or not you want to stay in that area or move off the left side of that stripe if you're proceeding straight on. That allows vehicles on your right-hand side come up to the intersection and make that right-hand turn. As Pete said, really for right-hand turn lane, vehicles making right-hand turn, when that becomes dashed, they should be on the right-hand side of that road at that point. At a right-hand turn pocket, a bike lane, as we said, should always be the left of that channel, where the arrow is showing. No, this is not a very difficult quiz. I need to work on this a little bit because it's pretty easy, guys. I mean, where would you want to be if you want to turn left? Well, obviously, you don't want to be in the right-hand turn lane. That's not serving your destination. And it's pretty clear that that center bike lane is going straight with the arrows. So your really option is, if you're going left, you're in that left-hand turn lane. If you are going straight, you're in that bike lane going through the intersection. Or if you're turning right, you're in the right-hand turn lane. Again, the lane that you want to be in is the one that serves your destination, where you want to go. Could the cyclist be turning left? Well, I guess he could be, but that's not where you want to be if you're going left. You want to be behind that gray vehicle there. That bike lane is showing you're going straight through that intersection at this point. Where would you want to wait to continue through? This comes up quite frequently with questions that people have. First of all, you got options there. You could be in the bike lane. You could be in the center of that travel lane where the arrow goes right or straight, or you could be a little bit about 1/3 of, or actually 2/3 of the way over towards the yellow stripe. If you're in that position, basically where that straight arrow is, that allows a vehicle to make a right-hand turn on red and allows traffic to continue to flow. As I said previously, that usually one of the few cases where you have a motorist say thank you for not impeding his right of way through that intersection. On this multi-lane one-way road, what does their lane position tell you about the direction that they are headed? Well, you got a cyclist there, looks like waving to you, but yeah, I guess he's giving the okay sign or something. But they're basically going through that intersection is what they're doing. Going straight through. That's pretty much it on the stripes. When we do this next time, Pete, we've got to get some really hard, there's a lot more difficult situations out there with striping, I think, that we need to look at. That was pretty easy, guys. The next one we're doing is looking at transit. So let me look at transit here for you guys. Bikes on transit. Is that showing on the screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Pete mentioned this a while back that, you know, when you're a cyclist, you can extend your ability to go further by using, either you could use the train, you could use, I used to live in Coronado, use the ferry going across every morning. It's probably one of the best times of my life in the morning, going across on that ferry or coming back home. You can also use transit. And what's really cool about transit is that almost, well, all the buses, North County Transit wise, and I think even metros down in San Diego, they all have bike racks in front. In fact, North County Transit usually has 3 bike racks in front. So the key to this thing is that you want to be able to use the rack that's closest to the bus. This will allow other users to use the other racks that are outside, further outside. And there's pretty clear instructions on the rack itself that tells you what to do. But again, key thing is to always load your bike to the empty position closest to the bunch. That allows other users to use those racks, other 2 racks there. It has a decal that says pull this handle down and then rotate this across the front wheel, and that keeps that bike in position. Here's an example, a little video of that being done. So here goes, he pulls it down, puts the bike closest to the bus, then he picks up that and rotates it and down over the front of the tire. You know, we've done a lot of talking with bus drivers about how they relate to cyclists. And I will say that bus drivers are extremely professional. If you have any question, or it's the first time you have a chance to use a bike rack like that, they're more than pleased to show you how to do it if you have any issues or concerns. But it works very nicely. Also, when you leave the bus, you're picking up your bike, make sure that you put that bike rack, if there's no other bikes, put that bike rack back up, because the bus driver really can't see that rack extending in front of him, which causes them concern a little bit. Coaster train, we talked about that quite a bit of the coaster going down in San Diego. Down below, you can put your bikes down below. If you're going Metrolink going north, they have bike cars themselves. This is, I think, an example of one of the cycling events up in LA area where just a ton of bikes went on. If you're going down on the coaster, I've been down the coaster quite a few times. If you're in the morning, you'll see a lot of folks bring bungee cords with them, because they're usually going from Oceanside down to Sereno Valley, down to Qualcomm area, and it gets pretty crowded sometimes in the morning. This is what I used to ride to work. I used to take the ferry. I lived in Coronado, worked over by Balboa Street in San Diego, and just said it was the nicest time of my life when I took that ferry across back and forth. Just very enjoyable. That's pretty much it for me. And I think Pete has got the last session, so we're going to be right on time. So Pete, I'm going to stop sharing and let you talk about riding in the rain.
Okay. So I'm going to share this screen. Slideshow. From the beginning. And tell me it's working. So
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So actually, Carl is the best person to do this because he used to ride in the rain in Portland when he was commuting. I commuted for 25 years in Southern California, so I didn't get the pleasure of doing this very often. But with a little extra care, you can do this and you can be quite comfortable, and it can be very rewarding. So what do you need to know? Well, it does reduce visibility. So you got to be even more visible than you are when it is not. And of course, it reduces friction. You really need to be able to plan ahead for both steering and for braking. And then of course, the other thing it does is it hides surface hazards, and it makes tire punctures. You have more flats in the rain than you will with dry pavement. The water floats the little small pieces of glass out of the pavement, out of the little nicks and crannies where it usually sits, comes up when you run over it with the front wheel, and usually it's set up perfectly to enter your rear wheel. And you know why that happens, right? 70%, 80% of your flats are always on the rear, and it's kind of Murphy's Law. The reason is that it's much harder to get the rear wheel off to affect the repair than it is the front wheel. So it can make you cold and dirty, but in San Diego, if you're not commuting, you can just not ride, but yes, you will miss the fun. So let's do a little video here. It's 2 minutes long. Even got great.
Wet weather scaring you into seclusion? Don't let rain or even heavy fog keep you off your bike. With a little caution and some planning, you can avoid slippery situations. In wet weather, reduce your speed and give yourself more time to stop. Rain and fog can mean wet brakes and the need to burn the water off your rims before the brakes grab. Brake early and evenly so you don't skid. If you start skidding, you have less control over your stopping distance, and it's much harder to control your bike. Keep an eye out for painted pavement, metal utility covers, and construction plates. They can all be slippery when wet. Keep your bike upright and your weight balanced as you cross hazards, especially cable car rails and subway ventilation grates. Leaning as you cross any of these slick surfaces can mean a quick and painful spill. Dress for the drizzle. A jacket with a tail will keep you from getting wet. Fenders will save you from tire spray and all the oily grime from the street.
Okay, we talked about reduced visibility, and especially at night. You know, automobile drivers are required to turn lights on if it rains, and of course most of the newer cars now do that automatically. But on your bike, what you're going to find is your lights are far less effective on wet pavement. And the only thing that helps us here is that the lights that are available these days for a very reasonable price are so much better than they ever were with LEDs that can make up for a lot of this. So increase your, oh, I can't say that, conspicuity as you would at night, dawn, or dusk. So, reduces friction. So brake early, as they mentioned in the video. Slow down before you turn. And watch out for all these things that can be very slippery. The 2-foot oil strip down the center lane is thankfully a thing pretty much out of the past now. And most newer cars out there don't leak anymore. And I very rarely see any evidence of oil in the middle of the lane. It hides hazards. So the grates, if you see that picture on the right, it's a bird's eye view. And those grates may not be visible at all to a cyclist who's plowing through about a foot of water here, as you can see in the picture on the upper left. I have a story here, but I'm not going to tell it tonight. So puddles can hide these holes, all these other things. Don't ride through them. And of course, we talked about that, the tires puncturing easier. So how can you stay warm and dry? They make helmet covers, visors, rain jackets and capes. That would be on the second picture there. Rain pants, shoe covers, use fenders, and pannier covers or plastic bags for your gear. This is the bike that they show there is a really good commute bike. You can see from here, it's got the triple chainring, so lots of nice low gears and fenders, probably mounted headlights and taillights as well. You really need those to be able, in the wintertime, you're probably going to be riding in the dark. But this is something, if you decide to commute, the money you'll save by not driving will more than cover the best rain gear that money can buy. So just treat yourself to the best. And that is it. We are completely done with that entire program, and we did it in less than 3 hours. So at this point, what we can do is we can answer questions on chat if you'd like, or even verbally if you want to ask anything that we might have left out. And also feel free to send email questions, and we could talk about, well, at some point I'd love to get you guys all into a road session where that's the best part of this. Every time we finish this, a live classroom, we say, congratulations, folks. You just got through one of the toughest things that we do. The road session is really fun. So I hope you can get into that at some point with us. And so, do we have any questions? Chat, talk. Can you unmute everybody, Carl?
I can unmute everybody, and then it's just free for all. Sure. Yeah. There we go. I tried.
Heck.
I don't know if it did. You guys can unmute yourselves too if you want to.
Okay, I have one thing to say before, if you don't have any more questions, and that is position on the road, visibility, very, very important. Be visible, be in the right position on the road, and then that's 90% of the whole issues you have. Be in the right position on the road, be visible, cars don't want to hit you.
Does it make sense?
Makes sense.
Give us thumbs up, come on.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. You're gonna stay out of the door zone, right? Thumbs up?
5 feet, yep.
Okay. All right, great.
I wanted to say just one other thing too. I just if people didn't came in late, we're gonna have a YouTube video. I'll make a playlist. Each section that we went through is going to be a separate YouTube video, so you guys can have it. And yeah, so it'll be a nice record. And then hopefully you'll get the Smart Cycling Guide before we do the road session, because the road session is really, it's fun. Everybody has fun. You know, 3 hours of PowerPoint. Pete and Howard, they actually, I've had to sit through several of these. I think Pete and Howard just set the record for good time management. So give them applause.
Okay. I'm saying good night, guys.
Good night,
Well,
everybody.
very good job, guys. This is Mike Maloney speaking. Very good job. You went over a lot of things that I already knew, and you brought up some new stuff. So it was very informative. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, someone just wrote that I'm now a more educated motor vehicle operator. That's something that we usually mention too, is that by taking this class and becoming aware of all the laws and how, I'm a much better motorist now. Better cyclist too, but I'm a much better motorist, I think, just as well.
That's
Yeah.
a good.
Thanks, Paul. That was, yeah, it's one of the things we do at the end of the class is hand out after the road session is we give a feedback sheet and what's the best thing you got out of this class. And that comment comes up a lot. This has made me a better driver. And so, you know, the more people we can put through there, the more people we get out on the road, the safer we'll all be. It's one of the things that's in the book. I was actually thinking about reading some of that earlier. There's actually, says avoiding crashes is one of the sections in here. And one of the things they say is that there is factual data studies that have been done that show that the more cyclists that are out there, the safer we'll all be.
That's true.
So, you know, besides being visible, it's just, you know, and it makes sense if you think about it. If the drivers see lots of cyclists, then they're not going to go to sleep and they'll pay more attention because they really don't want to hit us. There's some people there, I have to admit, there's people out there that would like us to go away, and they will yell at you and they'll honk at you and all that. And when they do honk at you, just think, well, they've seen me. They won't hit me. I mean, it's a good thing, and it's a good way not to, you know, get angry. You know, that doesn't help at all.
That's true, but I think if I hear somebody honk at me, that's a positive thing because I know they've seen me and the chances they weren't going to hit me. So
Right.
if they honk at you, so be it. It's fine. That's good.
Okay.
Okay. Good night, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Good class.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Good night.
Night.